Today we're going to talk about a guy who stood right at the hinge of history. He saw the future coming like a tidal wave, and instead of running, he decided to build an ark, and in doing so, he changed the course of an entire nation. I mean, really think about that question. Imagine a country just locked away. For over 2.5 centuries. No new tech, no new ideas from the outside world. And then all of a sudden, it's face-to-face with the biggest industrial powers on the planet. How do you even survive that, let alone come out on top?
Well, the answer, and this is the incredible part, it really starts with one person, a low-ranking samurai who had this crazy idea that to save his country, he'd have to break every single rule he was ever taught. And his name was Sakamoto Ryoma.
So, to really get who Ryoma was, you first have to understand the world he was born into, a world that was, frankly, about to be completely shattered.
For centuries, Japan lived under a policy called Sakoku, the locked country. And this wasn't just, being a little isolated. It was a near total blackout. If you tried to leave the country, the punishment was death. Foreigners were completely banned. It was a nation ruled by samurai, basically frozen in time.
260 years. Think about that. While Japan was sealed shut, the rest of the world was having the Industrial Revolution. You've got steam engines in Britain, empires being built across Europe. This long, quiet peace in Japan, it was living on borrowed time.
And then it all came crashing down. And I mean fast. In 1853, American steamships, they called them the Kurofune, the black ships, because of the smoke belching out of them, they just sailed right into Japan's capital. And with their cannons in plain sight, they delivered a very simple message: open up for business or else. And just like that, 260 years of isolation went up in smoke. So, where was our hero when these iron monsters showed up on the horizon? Well, he was a young guy in the capital, training to be a master swordsman, the absolute symbol of the old world that was about to disappear.
Now, Ryoma wasn't some highborn lord. Nope. He was from a lower samurai rank, but his family did have some cash from their merchant business. And get this, as a kid, he was apparently a total crybaby, until his older sister, Otome, basically toughened him up and taught him how to use a sword. So he was a real product of his time, totally focused on mastering this ancient art.
And this quote right here, man, it tells you everything you need to know about the early Ryoma. When he saw those American ships, this is what he wrote home. He was fired up, a young warrior ready to go. His first instinct was completely traditional: defend Japan with my sword and kill the invaders. But that way of thinking was about to change, big time.
Okay, so this is where Ryoma's journey really kicks into gear. He starts to realize that the old ways just aren't going to cut it, so he breaks from them completely and becomes a wanted man in the process.
He committed an act called dappan. This was a huge deal. See, a samurai's entire identity, their whole life, was tied to their clan and their lord. To just leave without permission, you were basically a nobody, a traitor. It was a death sentence. But Ryoma did it anyway, because he believed the problems Japan was facing were way bigger than any one clan.
So now he's an outlaw, a ronin, and his first big idea is still pretty rooted in the old ways. He decides he's going to assassinate a top government official, a guy named Katsukai Shu, who was pushing for Japan to open up and learn from the West. To Ryoma, this guy was a total traitor.
But when Ryoma shows up to kill him, sword in hand, something incredible happens. Katsu doesn't even flinch. He just sits Ryoma down, rolls out a map of the world, and starts explaining the real deal about global power. He tells him, fighting the West is suicide. We need to learn from them, build our own modern navy, and then we can defend ourselves. In one single conversation, Ryoma's entire world just flips upside down. He puts his sword away, and right there on the spot, asks to become Katsu's student.
So with this totally new vision, Ryoma goes from being a would-be assassin to a master strategist. And his first big mission is to solve the single biggest problem holding Japan back: the fact that everyone hated each other.
First, he creates something that had never existed before in Japan, a private company that didn't belong to any clan. It was part trading company, part private navy, basically a 19th century startup designed to fund a revolution. He used ships to make money with trade and then used that money to buy modern weapons. It was absolutely brilliant.
Now here's where we get to the impossible part. The two strongest domains in Japan, Satsuma and Choshu, despised each other. And I don't mean they were just political rivals. They were blood enemies. They had literally just fought a battle where they killed each other's men. Everyone knew that to change Japan, these two had to unite, and everyone thought it was impossible.
And this is where Ryoma's genius really shines. He just ignores all the politics and the centuries of hate and focuses on what they each needed. He knew Choshu was desperate for modern weapons, which Satsuma could get, and he knew Satsuma was running low on rice, which Choshu had plenty of. By brokering this simple trade deal, he built a bridge. And in 1866, with Ryoma as the witness, these two mortal enemies signed a secret alliance. Unbelievable.
With the alliance in place, the stage was finally set. The pieces were on the board. But Ryoma didn't just want to tear down the old world. He had a crystal-clear plan for what should come next.
While he was on a ship, he literally sketched out this document, a blueprint for a modern Japan. And it is just astonishing how forward-thinking it was. He called for the shogun to step down peacefully, for a parliament with two houses, for government jobs to go to talented people, not just nobles, and for Japan to deal with the world on equal footing. This wasn't just a rebellion, it was a vision for a democratic, modern nation.
And the craziest part? It actually worked. The shogun, facing this new, powerful alliance and wanting to avoid a bloody civil war that would leave Japan weak, agreed to the plan. In October 1867, he voluntarily gave power back to the emperor. It was a nearly bloodless revolution, something almost unheard of in history.
But here's the tragic twist. Ryoma would never get to see the future he designed. Just 1 month after his greatest triumph, just as this new era was beginning, he was assassinated in an inn. He was only 31 years old.
To this day, nobody knows for sure who did it. The most popular theory blames a pro-shogunate police squad. But the truth is, because Ryoma worked with everyone, the rebels, the government, foreign traders, he had enemies everywhere. The man who stood in the middle of everything was a target for everyone, and in the end, it cost him his life.
So what do we make of all this? What's the legacy of this outlaw samurai who burned so brightly for such a short time? Why does his story still matter?
He left behind this poem, which I think just captures his spirit perfectly. He wasn't doing it for fame or power. He was driven by his own personal vision for a better future, a future he probably knew he wouldn't get to see. And that blueprint he wrote on the ship, it became the foundation for the new Meiji government, which is what launched Japan's incredibly rapid modernization into a world power.
So, what can one person change? Well, Ryoma's story gives us a pretty clear answer. Everything. He was just one person who, by being willing to break the rules and think differently, completely altered the destiny of millions. Today, there's a statue of him in his hometown, and it's looking out over the Pacific Ocean, the very sea he knew Japan had to embrace to find its future. He proved that sometimes, to build tomorrow, you have to be brave enough to leave yesterday behind.